نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد بسم الله. We're indeed thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He has kept us in good health and that we remain the followers of His chosen religion, the religion for the entire mankind, Al-Islam. And we bear witness that there is no deity worthy of worship other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is His servant, the last messenger. So we have been discussing the etiquettes of Jummah and how to make the best of this day, which is really a blessing for all the Muslimin. And the way to do it at its best is to follow the Sunnah, the recommended ways of spending that day, and perform recommended acts on this day. So today we'll talk about one more blessing that is unique to Jum'ah. And for a moment, think about this. Imagine that you know a time of the day when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will accept your du'as. If you knew that time, you would make sure that you catch that time and make all du'as that you want to make to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala so that your needs are fulfilled. So that would be how you would look at that. No different than in our daily life. When you hear about a great sale, you are always cautious. Look, I know this is the hours I have to be there. I have to line up ahead of time. I'll bear the severe weather if I have to, but I'll get a good deal. So you have that mindset when it comes to the matters of dunya. And here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that there is a special moment on the day of Jum'ah that if you come to me, I will accept all your du'as. So why would you not pay special attention and try to make sure that we catch that moment on the day of Jum'ah? So how do we learn about that? It comes in a narration in Sahih Bukhari, narrated by Abu Hurairah ta'ala anhu. And he mentioned, أنا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ذكر يوم الجمعة فقال فيه ساعة لا يوافقها عبد مسلم وهو قائم يصلي يسأل الله تعالى شيئا إلا أعطاه إياه وأشار بيده يقللها. The Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam talked about Friday, and then he said, there's a time on Friday at which a Muslim, while he or she is performing prayers and is supplicating, will be granted whatever he or she is supplicating for. And then Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam pointed with his hand that this is a very short time, very short period. So now we should be curious, what would be that short time that if we can catch it, we can get what we want by asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and He will grant us. So scholars mention that there are two times on the day of Jum'ah where this blessing can be taken advantage of. So one of them is from the time Imam comes to the mimbar for khutbah of Jum'ah till the end of the Friday prayer. So that's one time. And the other moment is after the Asr prayer until Maghrib. And both are very short time. And especially for the time, if you think about it from the time Imam comes to the mimbar, you are expected to be quiet throughout the khutbah, but there is the small moment between the two khutbahs. And scholars say that's the time that you should try to maximize in making dua, because inshallah it will be accepted, whatever you ask in that time. And I'll tell you a personal act that I do, and someone guided me to it, and subhanAllah, since I've been doing it, I felt like this is something amazing. Inshallah, your parents, are with you today, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give them siha and a long life. But at a moment may come where they're no longer in this world. And if you make a habit of maybe, in that moment between the two khutbahs, make dua for your parents and make that a recurring habit, wouldn't that you would become a sadaqah jariyah for your parents. We forget in our daily lives, a lot of things. We get carried away. And if we make it a habit, inshallah, it will at least, there's one moment of special time every week, then we can make dua for our parents, whether they're alive or they have passed away. So we can simply say, رَبِّ ارْحَمْهُمَا كَمَا رَبَّيَانِي صَغِيرًا. Oh Allah, have mercy upon them as they were kind to me when I was young. So make that into habit. So one moment would be between the two khutbahs. Another one is when you prayed Asr, there's very little time, maybe half an hour to an hour between that time and the sunset. That's another great moment. So make sure you find these special moments and make dua subhanahu wa ta'ala, because He is the giver of everything in this world. So with that, let's turn towards our main topic, which is continuation of the tafsir of Surah Mulk. We have been going through verse by verse Surah Mulk and then reflecting upon the verses. So today, inshallah, we will continue for verse number 18. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وَلَقَدْ كَذَّبَ الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِمْ فَكَيْفَ كَانَ نَكِيرٌ. And indeed those before them were rejected, then how terrible was my reproach. So before this verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned how were other nations treated in the past when they disobeyed. And so this is a continuation of that you know what, there were nations before you under different prophets. But when they disobeyed, they were destroyed. So don't forget what was their final destiny, and that could be for you too. So remember that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is all powerful. So take heed from the history. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continues on in the next verse and mentions a great example of His majestic power, His creation. أَوَلَمْ يَرَوْا إِلَى الطَّيْرِ فَوْقَهُمْ صَافَّاتٍ وَيَقْبِضْنَ مَا يُمْسِكُهُنَّ إِلَّا الرَّحْمَنُ إِنَّهُ بِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ بَصِيرٌ. Do they not see the birds above them with wings outspread and sometimes folded in? None holds them aloft except the most merciful. Indeed, He is of all things seeing. So subhanAllah, look at how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes the flight of birds as another sign of His mastery. And think of it for a moment. The gravity of Earth is strong. Have you ever thought why moon revolves around Earth? Moon is a heavenly body and so is Earth. Why is moon revolving around Earth? Because it's actually the gravity of Earth that keeps pulling it towards it. So a heavenly body like a moon cannot get out of the orbit because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made this such that it keeps revolving around Earth. Similarly, why are we grounded on Earth? Like, why are we able to walk? Because the gravity pulls us down. And yet you look at birds, they're able to fly. And so something as light as a bird can fly, and something as heavy as a moon cannot get out of its orbit. So that's where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows how His power works in different situations. And our science from outside wouldn't be able to describe to us, but again, now that we know better, we understand how this mechanics works. SubhanAllah, now we know how we can fly planes in the air. So we understand this now, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it built into birds. This is very much an instinct for the birds that they know how to fly. And not only that, they know how to close their wings and open their wings and change their direction and their speed. All that aerodynamics, that we know today is built into the creation of a bird. SubhanAllah, again, this is an example. If you reflect upon it, this comes in without anyone teaching the bird how to fly. So such are the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala all around us, and we just need to pay attention and take heed from them. So we move on to the next two verses, which are also beautiful, and they highlight a very special way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala communicates with us. And I'll mention what that is. أَمَّنْ هَذَا الَّذِي هُوَ جُنْدٌ لَكُمْ يَنْصُرُكُم مِّن دُونِ الرَّحْمَنِ إِنَ الْكَافِرُونَ إِلَّا فِي غُرُورٍ. Which is your army that will come to your aid against the merciful Lord, but the disbelievers are in utter delusion. And the second verse number 21, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَمَّنْ هَذَا الَّذِي يَرْزُقُكُمْ إِنْ أَمْسَكَ رِزْقَهُ بَلْ لَجُّوا فِي عُتُوٍّ وَنُفُورٍ. Who is it that can provide for you if He should withhold His provision? Nay, but they persist in rebellion and aversion. So I want to call your attention to the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala engages in conversation in the Quran and how He is addressing us. So He approaches us in a way that is easy for us to understand the message. And if you know this, grammatical term, rhetorical questions, you pretty much ask a question without expecting an answer, but it is to call your attention towards something. As an example, if you say to your son or daughter, how many times do I have to remind you to eat lunch on time? How many times do I have to remind you not to go to school without having your breakfast? You're not asking for an answer at this point. You're just expressing the importance of that particular activity. So that's how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions many times in the Quran by asking rhetorical questions, just making you reflect upon it. So here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is asking a couple of questions, and He's emphasizing for us the topic. For example, do they not see how the birds fly? Of course, we see how the birds fly, but that again is something to reflect upon. Do they not know how, who can really help them if they are punished by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? There's no army that can help anyone once they are under Allah's punishment. And similarly, who can provide provision if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decides to withhold it? No one can. So all those are questions that invoke thought in us and make us appreciate the power and majesty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Continuing on with the next couple of verses. أَفَمَنْ يَمْشِي مُكِبًّا عَلَى وَجْهِهِ أَهْدَىٰ أَمَّنْ يَمْشِي سَوِيًّا عَلَى صِرَاطٍ مُسْتَقِيمٍ. Who is better guided, he who walks fallen on his face, or he who walks upright on a straight path? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is striking a comparison between a disbeliever and a believer in this verse. So a believer is like a person who is walking straight, upright on a path. But a disbeliever is someone who keeps falling on his face every step of the way. So a disbeliever cannot be equal to a believer cannot be equal to a disbeliever in any shape or form in this world and also in the hereafter. As we learn that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bring disbelievers on the day of judgment such that they'll be walking on their face. I mean, that will be, or almost hopping on their face. That will be the punishment, a disgrace that they will have. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the tawfiq to reflect upon the verses of Quran. There are lots and lots of examples Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Quran for us to think and ponder, and He even calls us to think about His verses. And it's not about just recitation and the reward that you get from Quran, but also the message has to be understood. So we make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allahumma ja'alna min ahli jannah wa la tukhzina yawm al-qiyamah. Ameen. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد ان لا اله الا انت نستغفرك ونتوب